Hey guys, back with another Echoing Thoughts podcast, episode number 13. And this episode, well, we'll start off with the upgrade. Got a little mic. If you don't see it on the YouTube, you're listening to the podcast. I got a mic. Hopefully, it helps with the audio. Um, just a little upgrade. Just wanted to sort of build off each episode, help improve my content. Hopefully, it sounds a little better, smoother. I would think my last podcast or video, I tried to switch between, you know, one recording into another where I had the class tiers list up. And when I shared my screen, the audio kind of was shaky, right? So I'm trying to be more consistent with that. Hopefully, be more smoother for you guys to listen to. So got a mic, bought it today, expected to come in next week, came in today. Same day shipping. I don't know how it said it was coming in next week, like the 14th, and ended up showing today a few hours later. So pretty sweet. Um, just just awesome. So here we are, testing it out, seeing how it goes. And really in this podcast, um, we just found out as I'm recording this, we found out that, um, the new level 220 area is coming out with the next patch. It's going to be, next week's podcast. Next week is going to be the March update already. So excited for that. Probably bring a new guest again, probably bring in Ageling and Shani again to kind of break down their thoughts of the update. But in this episode, just going to talk about a few things. Just talk about mainly rebalancing thoughts. I thought it'd be a good time. I got this question asked this week in YouTube comments, just my thoughts on what I would do for rebalancing. And I thought it'd be a good time, right? Expecting it. First, we expected it to come in February when CM Jade and I think it was CM Iris, one of them posted in the feedback section of Discord asking for feedback, right, on what we want to do with rebalances, being specific on skill percentages, lines, things like that. I thought it was coming in February. Didn't. It's coming next time. People think it's coming in April. Um, with the VOM update, we'll see how it goes. Right. Interested to see when it comes. That would be a good time. I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if there was no rebalance. I'll talk about that later. But I could give my thoughts on what I think the game needs, rebalancing wise. But first, going to talk about the best thing that I saw this week. And for some, it may not be the best thing, but for me, um, it's kind of awesome, right? The OG hero day one, the legend, YouTube put out all his content. Probolic is retiring, quitting, whatever you want to say. Um, he had his last hurrah, Lotus arc, sold his gear, sold his weapon, everything. He's going off to do bigger, better things, real life things. Um, Excited for him. Got to know him a little bit the past year. Um, had a lot of fun playing um, with him, and playing the hero class as well. So shout out to him. Wish him the best. I'm sure we'll still chat, talk on Discord and things like that. He'll be around. So Discord never really dies, but the game, he's taking one. He's leaving it, and excited for him for sure. Wish him the best. Wish him well, and in real life. But now I'm just going to talk about some questions that I've gotten. If you have any questions, again, just comment on YouTube. I'm always down to ask questions and, bring them up in the podcast. Go into more detail than just a YouTube comment. So definitely do that. Or you can email me at echoingthoughtspodcast@gmail.com for questions as well. But the first question I wanted to talk about was, when is a good time to extract nodes? And, you know, simple answer is level 1 is the worst. Level 25 is the best. Just based on the return on investment. You don't get many. I think you get like 20 shards extracting level 1. Level 25, you're going to get X amount percentage based return on investment. That's the best. Now, where I like to extract is sort of in the middle, right? I don't have the patience to wait till level 25. And it really, for me, as I'm either buying nodes in bulk or I'm just saving up and just using nodes, leveling, boost nodes through farming. Usually, a lot of my skills are being leveled at the same time, at the same rate, right? So when I do finally decide to extract, usually around level 12, 13, some are level 10, some are level 17, or level 20, whatever it is. That's usually the range I like to go. And the main thing for me is I like to do the math, right? So if I'm level 15. My V skill is level 15, and it takes me six, six of those V skills. So say my Divine Echo, 6 Divine Echoes crafted to enhance and level from 15 to 16. Then I'm doing the math, right? 750 shards. How many do I have to extract to get that 750? Right? I'm gonna do that. Whatever requires it, get to level 16, and then see how much do I need to get to level 17. If it's 6 again, if it's 7, whatever it is, then I'll do the math. Can I reach that number by extracting these specific trios, skills? If I can't, then I'm not going to level it. If I can, I'm going to level, right? That's basically all it takes, right? For me personally, I just want to get enough. Like, I don't want to be stuck in the middle, like level 16 and extracting and then not have enough to get to level 17, right? I'll just wait, level those slowly. Then when I have enough, then I'll just extract it, craft all the Divine Echoes at once, and then just get to level 17. Because sitting in the middle just doesn't do anything for me, and I could just level up something, level up trios as I'm waiting, and that's just the best. That's just, in my opinion, the best route to take. So I don't think there's a right answer. Some people like to go level 25 and wait and play a patience game, especially if they're buying in bulk. Sometimes you buy in bulk and you just hit that threshold, they just extract, right? As whatever you need, see whatever you can get out of it. A lot of different ways. The main thing is just try not to level as low as possible. Try not to level as level 1. Try to get in that sweet spot, kind of in the middle, or wait to the end. Now, the next question I got is sort of, what should lower level players say? You have a mythic, mythic weapon, no necros, right? You're kind of free to play. What would you recommend as your main focus for improving DPS, right? And I think number one priority has to be having a weapon with a good emblem. It has to be an emblem weapon, because the emblem, if it's BA or CD, it's going to give more attack. Physical versus emblem versus non-emblem is going to give more attack, just straight up that. Then find a good secondary weapon, and then you want to Star Force those pieces to improve that physical or magic attack, and then you want to flame them, right? Unique flames, whatever it is, get 2 lines, try to get 2 physical attack, get as much physical magic attack as possible, and then exalting, right? Exalt that weapon, level 30 to 40. That should be number one priority, right? A weapon should be the number one priority. All your resources should go into it. And then your secondary weapon, priority number 2. And then from there, it goes shoulders, cape, depending on your physical attack, magic attack. And really just about, for flames anyways, but it's really just about finding emblem pieces. After you have your weapon and your secondary weapon, then you want to find emblem, BA, crit damage, whatever it is. And then just trying to level those up slowly, at least from level 1 to level 3, level 4, and stopping there. Make sure everything gets level 3 and 4, and then work your way up to level 5 eventually. Level 5 is unnecessary. It's not a huge priority. And then exalting, in my opinion, exalting armors are pretty last priority. It doesn't give you a lot of value. It does give you a little bit of cap. It does give you, more HP, physical defense, but in my opinion, it's not as important as emblems for those BA and CD, and it's definitely not as important as weapon, secondary weapon, and even flames. Even if you're using uniques, getting 1-2 lines of good flames for your shoulders, cape, top bottom if you're going that route, and then Android if you want to do that as well. Those are the top priority flames, and then slowly building the armors for crit damage and things like that. So that's a priority list for me. Definitely start with the weapon, secondary weapon, and then go from there. And the last topic is rebalancing, right? That's the big topic. If it doesn't come in April, which now that I think about it more, I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, because there's just so much, like, they've given us so much boost recently. They put so much emphasis on raising the cap even higher. It just feels like rebalances are more for a time when everyone's just capping, right? And they need that rebalance to add more lines to the classes to maximize that cap, right? To do more damage. But right now, since the cap is so high, people are still trying to reach that cap, that to hit that potential. So the rebalance just feels like maybe it's going to help those classes hit that cap. Say if they have 23, 24, 25 mil cap, that they are going to hit that easier. But it just feels like to me that a lot of classes, unless you pretty much every class, unless you have a clone skill like Nightwalker, Night Lords, even Demon Slayers, Pallies, Shadowers, if you don't have a clone, like you're still capping 20, 21 mil cap with the boost to Necro physical attack, with the boost to stats in general. It just feels like they're still capping, right? So maybe rebalance is nice, but I think just adding more cap feels like that's the route they want us to take. And maybe they'll hold off on rebalance in April. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But if it does, there's really three things that I talk about all the time with rebalancing that I think that's going to help the game a lot. And to be honest, I think right now the meta is in a pretty good spot. I would say that from what I've seen in our server, in Asia, and in Europe, obviously I don't know everything, but people post stuff, right? And they're posting charts all the time. And what I've seen is that the classes that are doing the best are the classes that have the players that are doing the best are the players that have the most cap and they have the most skill. They have the most mechanics, right? And I think that's a good place for the meta to be, right? And I don't think that was always the case before. For example, people talk about ice lightning mages all the time, right? But before just the cap ceiling being blown off the the roof being blown off, people with level 50 necro armors didn't have a huge cap advantage. They had 15 mil cap versus 14, 13, right? Even classes without max damage cap souls on their weapon could out DPS certain classes with level 50 necro armors with the max cap because that cap difference was 2 mil. But now the cap difference is 18 mil, 17 mil, 18 mil to 23, 20 mil. That gap is just massive, right? So the classes, even if you're a subpar class, if you have that cap and you have good players that survive and no mechanics, which is a huge factor in endgame bosses, especially Lotus, right? You can't just stand there and DPS. It takes skill, right? It takes mechanics and practice, and that's who's shining on the DPS charts. Now, yes, some classes it's easier to do damage, right? If you have Synchro, if you have iframes, Paladins, Phantoms, even Dual Blades, you have iframes, makes it easier to survive, right? And I think that that's sort of if it's not DPS, if it's not lines, I think that's priority number one. I think priority is discussing iframes, really. And I think that it's not something that I think they're going to address, but I think they should, right? I think anyone can say that like iframes are such a game changer, right? I was playing, and everyone that says that Synchro or iframes aren't are only good for DR or only good for certain situations, I think they're wrong. They're just straight up wrong. Like having Synchro, even like Dark Sight, is such a huge advantage. Just useful whenever you are in a pickle. Whenever you just feel like standing there and maximizing DPS, it just immunes everything, right? It's just a huge advantage. I'm not just talking about Lotus. I'm talking about in Covert. I'm talking about in Mulong. I'm talking about in Lotus. Like you can just literally skip mechanics. And that is just such a huge advantage because, it's all about uptime. It's all about damage. The more attacks you get in. And those classes that don't have iframes, it just is such like, I don't think the disparity in damage is all that terrible, right? Obviously, there's some classes that are better than the others, but I don't think the gap is as huge as people think. I think the gap in iframes is the biggest factor, is the biggest difference, right? Synchro, 30 seconds every 90 seconds. Huge. Some classes have nothing, right? Some classes have, Phantoms can hit Synchro on top of Darksight, on top of Freud. You know, some people just have still have people just have iframes on 30-second cooldowns. Maybe if it's even like it's using a hyper skill, right? Wind Archers, Nightwalkers, heroes have some sorting where they can just every 20, 30 seconds, they have like a second iframe. Shadowers, same thing. Like even if it's just that short, having those options to counter certain mechanics is just such a huge advantage. One death is like 5, 10 seconds of not doing any damage. If it's up, if you're up, your big cooldowns are up, split is up, whatever it is, it's a good time to do damage and you're dead. The gap, it's just a game changer, right? And I think that is something that needs to be addressed. We've talked about it. I'm not the only one that talks about it, right? People are posting in feedback all the time. There's some options, right? Heroes will, instead of being a dispel or, sort of a dispel, immunity to certain skills, why not be an iframe as well, right? That's something everyone has accessibility to. Why not Will of Verdo be the same thing? Why not? Like I've talked about Synchro, rebalancing Synchro. I'm not saying 30 seconds on that. 30 seconds feels impossibly long. Now, I'm not saying what if they just do 15 seconds on? They split both in half, 15 seconds, 45 seconds, for example. People are going to say that's a buff, right? But people are going to say, oh, but that's 30 seconds. You can use Synchro 30 seconds in 75 seconds. That's better. You can mismatch the math any way you want. But I mean, even if I said 15 seconds every 15 seconds iframe for every 60 seconds, people are going to blow that up, whatever it is, right? It's there's going to be no math around it. I'm just saying a rebalance, right? It doesn't have to be like a nerf, but it's just like 30 seconds feels impossibly long. You skip entire rotations of skills during 30 seconds. You fall asleep. Like that is just a huge, huge advantage that I don't think Pally like it just doesn't feel like if you want to balance the game, you gotta start there, right? Yeah, so like why do some classes have like even charge, if you added charge as an iframe or teleport as an iframe, a split second thing here and there, that changes the whole gameplay. And people are going to complain here and there, but it just adds another layer of skill, right? It adds another layer of skill cap that should be in play, right? It's not just about who spends the most and who has the best gear, but also who can play their classes best, who can adapt to certain situations. That's what makes the game fun. And I'm sure a lot of paladins would disagree with me, but I think that starting with Synchro is a good place to start if you're, if you're thinking about rebalancing. Like some classes have nothing. I don't think it's impossible to like shrink the gap in iframes. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. This is a very, it's a very dynamic discussion. People are gonna have different opinions. I understand it. If Synchro affects paladins, it affects phantoms as well. It affects other people. And we can talk about Darksight as well. Just going back to 60-second cooldown every 3 seconds, whatever it is. Just allows for more flexibility. I played a Night Lord in Hard Magnus this past week daily, and that is like that 2-minute timer, even though you have your V2 skill that reduces the cooldown of Darksight, it just feels impossibly long. And Night Lords have, like, in my opinion, like Night Lords and Paladins, DPS wise, very similar, right? They have very reliant on Barrage and Echo to do majority of their damage. And when those CDs are off, they do nothing, right? They're very heavily reliant on Burst. But the biggest difference is Synchro, right? Survivability, right? Night Lords have no dash, they have no up jump, they have one iframe that's longer, and the duration is longer, and the duration of iframe is half as what Synchro is. That is the biggest difference, especially in Lotus, especially in long fights, especially even in Arc, right? It's just a huge separator from being S tier, in my opinion, to A tier. Or B tier, even. Like, even if they don't touch rebalancing damage and they just focus on iframes and shorten that gap, I think the game would be in a much better balanced place, and you'll be seeing some classes do much, much better in bossing than you'll think. And then so I talk about DPS, right? If they do, raise up those classes that are struggling, um, and then iframes, right? Shorten that gap, shorten that gap, bring that from people with no iframes to people that have the most iframes, right? And see how it affects the meta, because I think that it's just a deciding factor. It's just such a much bigger gap than DPS overall between the best class and the worst class. And the final thing, I said iframes are arguably the most important. This one's right up there with it. 1A, 1B, and that's crit res, right? And I think that, well, let's just say crit res is, again, like in all content, like the classes that have crit res are S tier, right? You looked at my tier list from my previous podcast, my previous video. Every class that has, except for one, maybe two, that has some sort of crit res is S tier. And that means that you basically need one of these classes in all of your endgame bossing. Lotus, Arc, Shade, Bishop, Paladin are 3 guarantees. And then Wild Hunters, if there's any left in the game, having a Wild Hunter, having a hero is night and day for DPS, right? They're just such huge X factors. That's when people see PRs, right? See personal records of damage. The first question isn't what's your cap? Oh, what's your stats? It's did you have a Wild Hunter? Did you have a hero? And that's sad, right? That's not how the meta should be, right? It should be about, insane. What did you do to improve your gear, right? What did you do differently mechanically, right? Did you try something different? It shouldn't be like, what's your team composition, right? That's not what you should be focused on. And if you like people that hit PRs aren't as excited, right? They're like, oh, I did great, but I could have done better because I had a Wild Hunter or I had a hero. And people that have a Wild Hunter and hero are more like, like it's cheating, right? Because not everyone has one of these. And so it's like, this is a PR, but would I be doing, like, what would my real score be if I was in, a regular situation without a Wild Hunter hero, right? And that's just sad, right? People should be excited about PRs. People shouldn't have to worry about what their team comp is. They should be worried about, did I play my class correctly? Did my progression and gear and stats actually translate to this? Or is it literally just an external factor out of control? Did I have a Wild Hunter or hero, or did I not? And that is just, I think that needs to change, right? I think that you're that's not how the game should be played. And I'm curious what they think is the solution, right? In my opinion, the solution is just crit res across the board. 5%, 10%, whatever it is, just add it to skills, main skills that are used in everyone's rotation, or just, yeah, just do that, right? It's not hard, or I think that should be their main focus, right? Because it doesn't only affect bossing, right? It doesn't only affect bossing, it affects covert, which is, an extremely important piece of content, right? Because that dictates, who's number one guild. Like, mythic secondary weapons are at stake, possible chance are at stake for rank 1 guild covert. This is an important piece of content that people, recruit for, right? And then, individual rewards for covert for those um shards is another huge factor, right? And that's kind of one of the reasons why I rerolled to Paladin, because my Paladin, like, I had a mythic secondary, and on my Demon Slayer, I was never individually top 10. And our guild wasn't top 1, top 2, top 3 either, so we weren't getting the maximum rewards. So in order to maximize, my attempts of leveling, my refining my mythic secondary, my Paladin was top 10. And then, top tier just to get that extra rewards. And that's a huge, deciding factor, right? And I don't think that whether your class has crit res or not, like, should be the reason why you have a higher chance of getting mythic secondary, or your guild doing better, or you getting more shards to be in top 10. It should be about skill. It should be about, strategy, and it should be about gear, right? That's what, that's who should benefit from it, not certain classes. And then, Mulong is the same way, right? Some classes just do much better. Solo content, everything, right? Crit res is just such a huge advantage. And I'm curious if they if they don't touch crit res, right? Just keep it the same way. Just totally ignore everyone's feedback. Totally just make it the specific, specific to certain classes. Like they're not going to take it away from paladins, right? They're not going to, because they just remastered it. They're not going to take it from heroes. They're not going to take it away from shadowers. They're not going to take it away from shades and bishops because they literally just implemented them into the game. So either they're going to give it to more classes, or they're going to stand pat with what they did and force players to decide, should I play these specific classes for this specific skill? Or what they're going to do is they're going to force players to decide how important is crit attack. And this is a whole nother kind of worms that I'm kind of sort of dabbling with right now. I'm sort of late to the game, but crit attack is equal to crit res. If you don't know, people have been doing tests for covert and things like that. They've been, pencilier sets for the set bonus of crit attack. They've been doing all these sorts of tests with crit attack to see what exactly is that skill, because we've never been told about what it is. And basically, crit attack, what they've come up with is equal to 100 crit attack is equal to 1% crit rate, or basically crit res, right? So, certain pieces of content have a certain amount crit res that you obviously can't crit all of your lines, right? Think of like Mulong, think of like any boss, it's covert, right? All the main ones, right? They have a certain level of crit res, and then crit attack kind of breaks that barrier, right? So even if you have 100 crit base, crit attack is going to allow you to crit a little bit more, right? And even like 10% or 1,000 crit attack is huge, right? 10%, that honestly could be the deciding factor between, you critting 90% of the time and 100% of the time in Lotus. And everyone knows crit attacks, everyone scales to crit damage and things like that. A crit is exponentially better than non-crit. So that adds up, right? 10% more, you're critting more than non-critting. It's just, back to the point, if they don't incorporate crit res into the next rebalance, which who knows what they're going to do, right? Crit attack, people are going to have to make a really tough decision between crit attack or for Absolab gear or crit damage percent for hats, or gloves, or, crit attack for outfits over boss attack for outfits for Absolab. Like, these are real question marks. And it's actually pretty interesting, right? Because people are going to be choosing boss attack, right? If they boss attack build, they have to, right? But classes with that are choosing crit attack, people that are going to choose crit attack, like, it's pretty ballsy, and it may actually pay off. One of the Wind Archers, Deuce Wolf, Wind Archer, hit Absolab on the hat. He chose crit attack over, it's like 500, 600 crit attack level 50 over almost 20% crit damage. And he said his damage exponentially went up. Not surprised. 5% more crit res. He doesn't have any crit res. That goes from, like, if you have a Shade, Pally, Bishop, and you're at what, 87% crit res for, Lotus or whatever, or Arc, and you get 5% on top of that, that's a huge advantage, right? That's way better than 17% crit damage, right? Especially if you're capping all your crit lines anyway. But again, the downside of that is if they add crit res to more classes, then that crit attack becomes obsolete. Maybe only in Covert, Mulong, things like that. Those solo content is going to be better. But it's just a topic for another time, for another discussion. And it's just fascinating to me that what they do with this rebalance, if they touch crit res or not, how it's going to affect the meta, right? It's going to be, kind of reminds me of the same thing. EXP build versus BA build versus HP build with flames and things like that. People are going to try so many different things, and you're going to see people that kind of take that chance on crit attack. Their stats, their, sexy stats like boss attack and crit damage, you may lose some, but that crit attack, that sneaky crit attack, 2,000, 3,000, that's a lot. That is a lot of crit attack, a lot of crit res. That is going to be a game changer. And it's just, kind of off topic, but it's just things that I'm thinking about with rebalances, right? I'm sure the devs are thinking about it. Maybe not. But made me thinking, got me thinking just this past week when, the Wind Archer Deuce was telling me about that, was talking about that. And I just had to think about it for rebalances. And it's just funny. All of these, kind of deep dives and nerdy things that you can think about with, with building your gear. And it's going to be different from everybody, right? If crit attack is that huge of a X factor in, in the meta, in damage, and if crit res is going to be that huge of have that big of an impact, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be, we'll see, right? We'll see. And, that's my thoughts on rebalancing, right? Overall, like I just get excited about it, talk about it. I love that question. I've talked about it before in a previous pod, talk about a lot to other people. It's just, those are really the three pillars, and figuring out if Nexon is actually going to pull the trigger on iframes, highly doubt that, right? That's a pipe dream. Even if it's benefits me as a paladin player for Sankro to be so overpowered, if I'm being true and honest, I don't want to be the overpowered class, right? I don't want to have such a huge advantage. Then it makes your achievements not seem as amazing, right? Like you progress and you're just like, oh, but paladin, right? But you have Sankro, right? And but then it's like, what if they take that away from you? Then what are you? And that's where it's really about skill and gear and kind of combination of everything. And that's what I'm hoping for, right? A balanced game where people aren't like, oh dang, you were doing damage, like regardless of your class, right? It's like seeing like a battle mage pump damage, right? It's like seeing like mechanics for the first time, or cannoneers, or you know, um, any lower tier class like a Kaiser or something, pump out real damage. Like, oh dang, that guy, that guy's pumping. What did he do? Like, that's awesome to see, right? But now it's like paladins. It's like we're numb to it already. We're not even like excited. It kind of just breaks the barriers. It's like DBs and blasters and things like that. So rebalance. I'm excited. I hope that hopefully they do something, right? I think it's still good for the game. Rebalance damage. Bring up those lower tier classes. If they touch iframes, that's a bonus, in my opinion. If they touch crit res, which is see if they really listen to us in the community, that's another thing. But love to hear you guys' thoughts about rebalances. Again, if you have any questions, things like that, don't be afraid to comment. YouTube, I love reading all the comments, questions, things like that, helping people out. DM me on Discord. People have been DMing me on Discord. I help them all the time. Tag me in chat if you have any, or in Maple General, whatever, wherever you see me, I'm around. Right? Just I'm free and available. Want to help the community, help people. I love just talking Maple. Right? So reach out anytime. I really appreciate you guys listening. If you're watching on YouTube, kind of comment what you want to see with more content. I'm trying to add layers and layers, right? I was thinking about, watching other people's content and, just praising them, shouting them out, kind of bringing recognition on these great players that are doing great things, that maybe, don't have the platform and are trying to put out more content. I think it'd be pretty cool to see. I think there's a lot of great players that are a lot stronger than me, that are doing insane damage. And I think they should, I kind of want to share that to people, right? If you're interested in that thing. So definitely comment YouTube, subscribe, like this, just let me know, right? If this is something you guys like, if you want to see VOD reviews, if you want to see me do different things with this podcast style, I might clip some of these here and there. We'll see, right? I'm always open to suggestions, and constructive criticism. Just trying to have fun, trying to help you guys. I enjoy doing this, help you guys, put out content, and talk about the game Maple, just a game we all enjoy, small community, whatever it is. It's fun. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, whatever it is you are seeing this. I'll see you guys next time. Stay safe.